I always wondered about black men. It wasn't something I said out loud, not even to myself in the mirror, just a silent curiosity, folded neatly into the corners of my mind like a shirt you don't wear but can't throw away. I grew up in a town where skin color came with assumptions, and desire, especially mine, was a private thing, more burden than beauty. I moved to Chicago 2 months ago. A new job, a new skyline, and the freedom to finally breathe without someone recognizing my father's last name. I rented a studio in Lincoln Park with large windows and little furniture. It was the kind of place you imagine adulthood will feel like: bare, expensive, and a little lonely. The night I met him, I wasn't planning on staying out long. An old college friend, Jasper, had invited me to a rooftop birthday party. I didn't know the guy whose birthday it was, but the beer was cold, and the city looked soft under the haze of golden streetlights and late summer air. People were laughing, music pulsing gently in the background, and I stood at the edge, pretending to text someone. That's when I saw him. He was talking to a girl near the makeshift bar. Lean frame, tailored jacket over a white t-shirt, dreadlocks tied low at the nape of his neck. There was a stillness in him that made you want to look twice. And when he smiled, God, there was no need for light. You could see the warmth radiating right through his teeth. I wasn't staring, not really, just watching, admiring, wondering like I always did, who he was, what he smelled like, how it would feel to trace the line of his jaw with my thumb. These were thoughts I would normally shut down fast. But something about him, his ease, his presence, kept me from turning away. He noticed me before I realized. "You lost in thought or just antisocial?" he asked, stepping beside me, holding a drink with a single lime wedge floating in the glass. I stammered something about needing air. He chuckled. "Yeah, that's the classic introvert excuse. I use it all the time." I smiled, guilty as charged. "Terrance," he said, offering his hand. "Garrett." I replied, shaking it. His grip was warm, confident, not tight, not soft, just grounded. We talked for 15 minutes, maybe 20. Nothing earth-shattering. Movies we liked, the best pizza in the city, music preferences. But there was this thread, this unspoken thing weaving between his words and mine. He had a way of leaning in when I spoke, like he was listening not just to the words, but the hesitation behind them. I kept waiting for him to ask if I was gay, if I was into black guys, if I was single, but he didn't. He didn't have to. He just watched me with eyes that asked better questions. When he laughed, he did it with his whole chest. When I spoke, he didn't interrupt. It sounded like such a small thing, but it made me feel like I mattered. "You new to the city?" he asked. "Yeah, just moved here in May." "How's it treating you?" I shrugged, still figuring that out. He nodded slowly. "Well, you got good taste in rooftops." And then he leaned in, not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could smell his cologne, something earthy and clean, and said, "You ever let go, Garrett? I mean, really let go?" I felt my stomach twist. "I don't think I have." He looked at me like that meant something, like it was an answer to a bigger question. "You should try it sometime," he said, before walking away, leaving the scent of whatever he was wearing and the echo of his voice burning a quiet hole in my chest. I stayed at the party another hour. I didn't see him again. He disappeared like smoke, effortlessly, but something about that interaction stayed with me, like a fingerprint on a wine glass. It wasn't just what he said, it was how it made me feel. Exposed, but not in danger. Curious, but not afraid. That night, I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, his voice repeating like a hum beneath my skin. "You ever let go?" Maybe it was the city, maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was just time. But as I drifted into sleep, I thought to myself, maybe it's time I do. He texted me the next morning. Nothing flirtatious. Just, "You ever had Haitian food?" I stared at the screen longer than I should have. "Nope," I finally replied. Seconds later, "You're about to." We met that evening on the south side, outside a small, tucked-away restaurant called Laque's. It was the kind of place that didn't care for signage or style. Just good food, good people. I was overdressed, nervous, and 30 minutes early. When Terrance arrived, he was in a fitted hoodie and jeans. Effortless, again, He greeted me with a grin that made the rest of the world quiet. "Relax," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You look like you're about to sit a job interview." I laughed. "This is a little out of my usual radius." "Good," he said. "Your radius needs stretching." We sat in a corner booth. He ordered for both of us, speaking to the server in Creole. I pretended to scan the menu, but I was watching him, his hands, his mouth, the way he leaned back in his seat with the quiet confidence of someone who wasn't trying to impress. The food came, rich, spicy, full of flavors I'd never tasted. I didn't pretend to understand it all, and he didn't expect me to. "So, what brought you to Chicago?" he asked, dipping a fried plantain into a small bowl of sauce. "Escape," I said before I could overthink it. He raised an eyebrow. "From what?" "Myself. My family. Expectations." He nodded like he understood too well. "You're not the only one running from something." I wanted to ask what he meant, but something about the way he looked out the window told me not to. We finished eating, and instead of calling it a night, he took me for a walk through the neighborhood. It was warmer than usual for September. Kids were still playing on the sidewalks, music spilling from open apartment windows. I felt like I'd stepped into someone else's world. But for once, it didn't feel like trespassing. He stopped at a street corner where an old man was playing saxophone. We stood and listened for a while. Then Terrance turned to me and said, "You ever dance in public?" I smirked. "Not sober." "Perfect," he said. "We're both halfway there." And just like that, he took my hand and pulled me into the rhythm. No crowd, no music beyond the saxophone's moan. His body moved slow and close, guiding mine until I wasn't thinking anymore. I forgot where I was. I forgot what I was afraid of. "You're stiff," he whispered. "Stop trying to control everything." "I'm not used to this," I murmured. He leaned close, lips just brushing my ear. That's the point. The moment lingered, his hand on my waist, my heart in my throat. I didn't know if this was just flirting or something deeper, but I didn't want it to stop. When he finally let go, my skin felt cold. "I'm not usually like this," I said, trying to find my balance. He studied me. "You don't have to be." We didn't talk much on the ride back. He drove this time, windows down, music low. I stared out at the city, heart beating to some new rhythm. His apartment was on the third floor of a brick building that smelled like warm wood and laundry. When we stepped inside, everything was neat but lived in. Records stacked by the player, a single mug on the counter, photos tacked to the fridge. A life that made space for him, not for show. He didn't ask. He just stepped close, and I didn't move away. His hands found my jaw. Mine found his chest. We kissed. It wasn't hungry or hurried. It was exploratory, like two people learning a language neither of them spoke fluently, but were desperate to understand. When we moved to the bedroom, it wasn't about sex, not really. It was about trust. Letting go. I'd never been touched like that. He didn't treat me like porcelain. He didn't treat me like a checklist. He moved like he was discovering something in me, something even I hadn't seen. When it was over, I didn't want to leave. He handed me a glass of water and sat beside me on the edge of the bed. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. More than okay. He didn't smile, just looked at me in that deep, deliberate way of his, like he saw something waiting to bloom. "I don't do this often," I admitted. He said nothing, just rested his hand on my knee, thumb drawing slow circles. Outside, the city breathed. Inside, something cracked open. I knew, even then, that the world would feel different in the morning. I didn't know how much. Not yet, but lying there under his sheets, my body aching the quietest, sweetest way. One thought kept echoing through me. I've never felt more alive. The days that followed blur in a way I hadn't felt since childhood summers. Time measured not in hours, but in moments. The heat of Terrance's hand resting on the small of my back in a crowded crosswalk. The way he laughed with his whole body, like he didn't know how to do anything halfway. The way he texted, "Just made coffee. Come steal a cup on Sunday mornings," and how I always did. He wasn't mine. Not officially. There were no titles, no promises. But the space between us kept shrinking, day by day, until it felt like he was stitched into my rhythm. I didn't know if it was love, but I knew it wasn't casual. At least not for me. Still, there were cracks. He didn't like questions. Every time I asked about his past, where he grew up, if he'd ever been in love, what scared him, he'd pivot, charm his way out of it. You don't really want to know all that, he'd say, smiling. But I did. I wanted to know everything. I told myself he was just guarded. Maybe he'd been hurt. Maybe this was his way of protecting whatever it was we were building. I convinced myself I could wait. But waiting, it turns out, breeds imagination. One night, we were lying on his couch, watching a documentary neither of us were really following. He was scrolling through his phone, screen tilted away from me. I wasn't trying to look. But when the brightness flickered across his face, and I caught the corner of a message bubble pop up, "Same time tomorrow," my breath hitched. The name said Mason. I said nothing at first. He locked his phone and leaned back like nothing had happened, like nothing had changed. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe this was always a dynamic. I just hadn't been paying attention. But something in me shifted. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way he never left his phone unattended. How his Friday nights were always booked for work stuff, yet never involved him talking about work afterward. The way he gave me all of his body, but kept his life zipped up like a coat too tight to share. A week later, I asked, "Who's Mason?" He barely looked up from his eggs. "Friend." "The kind of friend who texts you late at night?" He sighed, leaned back in his chair. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I need to know if I'm the only one you're doing this with." His expression didn't shift, not even a flinch. "I never said we were exclusive." I swallowed hard. "But you never said we weren't." He stood up, carried his plate to the sink, rinsed it clean like it was just another morning. "You think I owe you something?" he asked, voice flat. "No," I said, and I meant it. "I just thought, I don't know, that maybe this meant something more." Terrance didn't respond right away. He leaned against the counter, arms folded, gaze fixed on a window. "Look, Garrett," he said finally, "you're sweet, and you're new to all this. But don't build stories in your head. You'll end up disappointed." Disappointed. That word hit harder than I expected. Not because he said it, but because it confirmed something I hadn't wanted to admit. I'd already built the story. I was already in it. I left without finishing my coffee. The walk back to my apartment was cold. Even though the air was still thick with late summer warmth, my legs moved on autopilot, but my mind spun. I replayed every moment, every kiss, every night spent in his bed, every unspoken promise I thought I saw in his eyes. Had it all been performance? Had I read meaning into a script he'd repeated with others? I didn't cry. Not then. I got home, sat on my bed, and stared at my reflection. My hair was a mess. My shirt smelled like his detergent. I looked like someone who'd loved too quickly and been careful too late. I grabbed my phone, opened his text, scrolled. I saw it all differently now. The way he always avoided saying anything lasting. The compliments that now felt generic. The emojis that used to make me blush now looked like empty decoration. And still, despite everything, I missed him. I missed the warmth of his voice. The way he always knew when I was spiraling, even through a text. I missed how he held me like I was breakable, but kissed me like I wasn't. I missed who I thought he was. And that's what hurt the most. Because maybe he never lied. Maybe I just filled in the blanks with what I needed to hear. But still, he let me believe I mattered more than I did. And I didn't know how to unfeel that. I started avoiding places where I might see him. It wasn't difficult. Chicago's big enough when you want it to be. I stopped taking the red line after 6 p.m. I skipped Jasper's birthday party, even though I'd RSVP'd weeks ago. And I muted Terrance's number, not because I was done, but because I knew if his name popped up on my screen, I'd answer. I wanted to believe I was stronger than that. But curiosity is a traitor. One night, around 11, I found myself walking past the street. I told myself it was coincidence, that I was restless, that I just needed air. But I knew better. His apartment window was lit. A warm amber glow behind half-closed blinds. I stood across the street, hands in my pockets, feeling like a cliché, a discarded lover hoping for scraps of clarity. That's when I saw him. He came out of the building in a navy overcoat, his hair pulled back, looking devastatingly polished. He wasn't alone. A man followed close behind, taller than me, sharp jawline, confident stride. He smiled at Terrance the way I used to, the way I still wanted to. They didn't hold hands, but the intimacy was there, in the way their shoulders brushed, in the pause at the curb, where Terrance leaned in to whisper something that made the other man laugh. I didn't move, just stood there, watching, feeling equal parts invisible and exposed. His name was Mason. He had to be. They walked toward the hotel on the corner. Not fast, like they had time, like they'd done it before. I turned before they went inside. I couldn't watch them disappear. Back in my apartment, I sat on the floor with my back against the fridge. The hum of the motor filled the silence. I scrolled through old photos, ones Terrance didn't know I'd taken. A shot of him asleep. One hand curled under his chin, lips slightly parted. Another of him laughing at something I said during a grocery run. He looked happy. I thought I made him happy. It wasn't just that he was seeing someone else. It was that he made me feel like I was a someone. I didn't sleep that night. My thoughts kept pulling me apart. I wondered if Mason knew about me. If Terrance had told him I was just another story in a long line of flings. The next day, I sent a message. Just 4 words. Did any of it matter? He read it instantly. No reply. Hours passed. Still nothing. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. You mattered to yourself. That's enough. That was all he said. And somehow, it was worse than silence. I threw my phone across the bed. He didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. Didn't even pretend to offer closure. I thought I'd feel rage. But what came was grief. I grieved the boy I had been before I met him. The one who wondered but never knew. The one who believed intimacy came with honesty. The one who thought letting go would feel like flying, not falling. For a week, I barely left my apartment. I worked from home. I ignored texts from Jasper, from my sister, from co-workers who pretended to care. I didn't want comfort. I wanted understanding. And I didn't know how to ask for that. I played the records Terrance once put on while cooking. I wore the t-shirt I'd accidentally left at his place, and he'd returned folded in a paper bag, smelling like him. I should have deleted everything. Photos, messages, the playlist we made together. But I didn't. Not yet. Not then. Part of me still wanted to hold on to it, to the memory, to the version of him I invented, the one who reached for me at night, like I was more than just a placeholder. I told myself this pain meant it was real, that something only hurts this much when it meant something. But deep down, I knew better. Love isn't supposed to feel like mourning. One night, I walked past a mirror in my hallway and barely recognized a man staring back. I looked older, more hollow around the eyes. My jaw was tighter, like I'd been biting backward for days. I stood there for a long time. Then I whispered aloud, "I'm done." It didn't feel powerful. It felt like surrender. But sometimes surrender is the only path to healing. Time didn't heal everything, but it softened the edges. Weeks passed. The air turned sharper. Leaves curled into rust-colored spirals on the sidewalks. I walked slower now, more deliberately, as if retracing my steps with better eyes. I no longer looked over my shoulder, expecting to see him. I stopped checking my phone for his name. The world moved on. And so did I. I started writing again. Nothing elaborate, just lines in a notebook I kept on the kitchen counter. Some mornings, I'd scribbled down what I wished I'd said. Other times, I wrote about silence, about how it expands inside a person until it feels like you're full of it. I didn't go back to Terrance's neighborhood. I avoided it not out of fear, but out of respect for the ghost of myself that still lingered there. I needed space to be someone new. Then one night, I ran into Jasper. He cornered me at a bookstore downtown, arms full of vinyls, his grin wild with recognition. "Where the hell have you been, man?" he asked, like I'd been missing from his life and not just dodging texts. We went for coffee, talked about nothing and everything. Eventually, he brought up Terrance. "I saw him a few days ago," he said, eyes watching my face. With someone new. I nodded. I didn't flinch. That felt like progress. He looked the same, Jasper added carefully. Of course he did, I said. He always does. And that was that. We didn't linger. There was no need to. I walked home under amber streetlights, hands in my coat pockets, my breath puffing like ghosts in the air. The cold had settled into the city's bones, but I felt something warm inside me again, something earned, not borrowed. The healing wasn't loud. It didn't come like thunder. It was a quiet unfolding, a steady realization that closure doesn't always arrive with answers. Sometimes it shows up as acceptance. One afternoon, I pulled out the playlist we made, not to feel sad, just to see what remained. I listened to a song we danced once in his kitchen, both of us barefoot and laughing over burnt rice. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I just listened. Then I closed the app and deleted the playlist. Not out of spite, but because I was ready to make new memories without him as a shadow in the background, ready to reclaim my curiosity on my own terms. Terrance taught me things, some of them painful, but all of them necessary. He taught me that being desired isn't the same as being valued. That chemistry can be both a gift and a weapon. That not all connections are meant to last, but they can still leave meaning behind. And perhaps the biggest lesson, the difference between being chosen and being truly seen. One evening, I stood by the same rooftop where we'd first met. A new party buzzed above, distant music floating down into the quiet street. I didn't go up. I just stood there for a moment, looking up at the string lights, remembering that version of me, the one who stood awkwardly by the railing, half drunk and fully curious, waiting for something he didn't yet have words for. I smiled, not at the memory, at the growth. I turned and walked away, not straight, not crooked, just forward, and I realized I used to wonder about black men, about what it would feel like, about who I'd become. Now I don't wonder anymore. I remember, I reflect, I grow, and I no longer ask myself whether it mattered to him, because I know it mattered to me. And sometimes that's enough to keep walking.